جمال الوجود بذكر الإله وتصفو الحياة بنور هدى.
Jazakum Allah khair. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. And the session is on a very important concept known as tarbiyah, which also can raise a lot of confusions. And so I'm going to start off by asking you a question, and I'd like participation from people. And my question obviously is directed to teachers or educators, because this is for Islamic schools, but obviously it applies in every setting. When you walk into your classroom, and I'm asking the teachers here so they can respond. When you walk into your classroom, do you walk in with the mindset of a teacher, or the mindset of an educator, or the mindset of a murabbi? And be honest. So when you walk into your classroom, or have you even considered the differences? Have you even considered the meaning of those terms? So as a teacher, again, or as a person walking into a classroom, do you walk in with the mindset of an educator, a teacher, or a murabbi? Where are the teachers? Yes? Okay, excellent. So the sister is a physics teacher, right? And that's actually an excellent start, because so she said she walks into the classroom with the mindset of an educator because of being a physics teacher. That's a very interesting start, actually, because often we assume to present or implement or manifest the qualities of tarbiyah, i.e. being murabbi, one only needs to do so in the Islamic studies or the Arabic studies, or in anything related to religious. And that and this is an important issue to raise, that if I'm a physics teacher or a biology teacher or a health physical education teacher, then the responsibility of tarbiyah is not mine. But also because most of our schools have non-Muslim teachers, right? Sometimes 50% of our teachers are not Muslim. So then there is this dilemma. Can non-Muslim teachers also act as a murabbi if the very concept of tarbiyah, which I will define in a second, is Islamic, the concept of tarbiyah? Can our non-Muslim teachers be involved in the process of tarbiyah? Yes? Very good. And so once we understand the meaning of tarbiyah and its scope, we should be able to realize that everybody in the school, and there's a very important point to keep in mind, because as I will demonstrate, tarbiyah is a process, and it will only become successful if everyone in the school takes part, including the people sitting on the board of governance. Although they don't engage and interact with the school, I understand that, but they're in their engagement with the principal, for example. It includes the principal or the leaders. It includes the teachers or the educators. But it also includes those people working in the canteen and the bus driver and everybody working in the school. If there is a conscientious understanding of tarbiyah, and we will go through it, then everybody should be involved in the process. Secondly, being a process, everything you do or say leads to tarbiyah. And as we heard Dr. Shaheen says, tarbiyah could either be positive or negative. So everything you say and everything you do, if your mindset is that if the mindset is that I am to do the tarbiyah, and I'm very pedantic about not translating terms, and you shall see why. And that's why I'm not saying if you're in the mindset of nurturing. I don't want to use the word nurturing, because it doesn't capture the full scope of the word tarbiyah. So I'm going to say, if you have the mindset of tarbiyah, then not only should everybody in the school be involved, but everything you say, everything you do, and your feelings towards the learners has a huge impact on the tarbiyah process. And I say your feelings because as Muslims, alhamdulillah, we know in our tradition, it is not only what you say that impacts the heart, because we're not impacting the mind only. We want to impact the heart. It is not only what you say that impacts the heart, it is how you feel in the heart that impacts the heart also. We believe that. Although maybe if you use science, they say, well, where is the empirical proof for that? How do you quantify that? I don't want to quantify it. We believe. Right? So these are important precursors. And I want to share a quick story of one of the great Imams of the past by the name of Imam al-Awza'i. You heard of the Imam al-Awza'i, rahmatullah alayhi? From Lebanon, actually. And he was one of the, considered an Imam of the caliber of Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i and others, except that his madhab did not survive, as the mashayikh know. It is said Imam, and every Imam was a murabbi and a teacher. He was traveling for Hajj. In those days when travel was cumbersome and difficult on the horseback or camelback, took months. And on the way, he was met by a highway robber, qata' tariq. And of course, the highway robber didn't have Instagram and all these things, so he didn't know who the guy was in front of him. But he wanted to kill him, to kill the Imam and take his possessions. So the sword in one hand, threatening the Imam. Then he said to him, but before I kill you, tell me, what do you do? And the Imam simply said, أُعَلِّمُ الْأَطْفَالِ الْقُرْآنِ. I teach children the Quran. Of course, he does more than that. He said, really? He said, yes. He said, well, then read me an ayah. Just read an ayah. He said, I will. Now the Imam read half an ayah, where he said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وفي السماء رزقكم وما توعدون. Half the ayah. وفي السماء, in the heavens, meaning with Allah, is your sustenance, your rizq, your provisions, and everything else you've been promised. Half an ayah, not a half an hour khutbah, half an ayah. But that ayah, because it came from the heart of this Imam, because he doesn't only know the ayah, but he's convinced about the ayah. And that's why the ulama say there is a difference between knowing and being convinced about what you know. Knowing and qana'a. They say the ayah went straight to the heart of the robber. So he dropped his sword and he said, Allah promises my rizq and I kill for it, I make tawbah. The impact of what comes in the heart, we believe that. Anyhow, cut a long story short, they went their way. Then the Imam went to do his tawaf at night, and they didn't have the big clock, tower clock, and all the rubbish now. And then it's dark, so he saw a man facing the Kaaba and weeping. The Arabs say, كَانَ يَبْكِي كَالَّذِي ذُبِحَ إِبْنُهَا فِي حِجْرِهَا. He was weeping like a mother whose son was killed in her lap. Can you imagine the weeping? To the extent that the Imam felt sorry for him. So he went and put his hand on his back and he says, Ya akhi, O my brother, Inna Allah Rahmanun Rahim. Allah is Rahman Rahim. When the man turned his face, it was the thief. The transformation. Never underestimate what comes out of your mouth. You're not just a teacher. You're not just an educator from the Islamic philosophical educational perspective. And if you're not just a teacher, and if you're not just an educator, then you need to be absolutely mindful about every word you say, every act you do, and your feelings and emotions. And I'm going to give you examples. Then the thief said to the Imam, he said, read me another ayah. He might drop dead now. So the Imam continued the ayah. فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّهُ لَحَقٌّ مثل ما أنكم تنطقون. By the Rabb of the heavens and the earth, it is as true, meaning that the fact that your rizq is with Allah is as true as your own speech. In response, the thief said, who made Allah angry that Allah has to take an oath? Because Allah has taken an oath. فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This is the only time Allah takes His oath. فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Why does Allah have to take an oath? Meaning the thief was so convinced that Allah is Ar-Razzaq after listening to half an ayah that he didn't realize, he thought that Allah doesn't need to take an oath to convince me. Why am I saying this? Unless we begin to believe that we are more than just teachers and educators, coming back to what I was saying yesterday about the philosophical realignment of not just what we teach, but it is how we do it also, then we will not achieve the intended outcomes of Islamic education vis-a-vis ma'rifah, as I said yesterday, recognition of Allah, for example. So that's as a precursor. So when you walk into the classroom, if you feel that you are a murabbi, and we'll talk about what a murabbi is, then actually your work should have started before you walked into the classroom. It should have started perhaps when you woke up for tahajjud and you made dua for your students, because you know that it is not you who will bring a change. You are merely a tool. But you seek Allah's intervention and assistance before you walk into the classroom in order to transform the lives of those young people. The intention, you started when? In tahajjud or after Fajr Salah if you didn't get up for tahajjud. Then when you walk into your classroom, you walk with the right intention. Never underestimate the power of intention. And the intention, one of the intentions should be, I am not walking in this classroom because I am doing them a favor. Because all the ulama, if you read their life, they say, we never thought that we were doing students a favor. But we always believed they are doing us a favor by allowing us to teach them what Allah Ta'ala has entrusted us with. Complete different way of thinking. So the intention is, they are doing me a favor. And because this is a trust from Allah Ta'ala, number one, I have to fulfill this trust. But number two, my intention is nothing but the best interest of these young people. And the best interest for these young people is to transform so that they know Allah. If you achieve that, wallahi, even if they don't get the marks you want, you know you succeeded. Are you following? Any objections to what I said? Any objections? Step outside. Either Dylan or I will deal with you outside. We're both big people. No objections? You sure? Any objections? Any comments on what I have said so far? Share your thoughts. Any comments? Yes, please. Alaykum salam. Can you stand up and just, is there a mic that we can, go on, sister? There's a mic, yes. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, what you said is really inspiring. And especially the point that you made about Niyyah is what I tell my school teachers as well, that you have to purify your intentions before we step into the classroom. It's really, really important for us. However, I do feel that there is a lot that needs to be done in this domain, and we need to constantly set so many reminders.
Yes.
Because of the, one of the things that I have experienced in running my own school, and being in this profession for only 2 years long in education, is that teaching has not been as a looked up to profession in many, many countries. And what we are facing as school founders is that there's a really big gap in finding the right kind of teachers, and then there is an immense gap in the tarbiyah of the teachers as well. So how do you think we tackle some of those issues that are there?
Excellent, inshallah. We may address this as I'm going, inshallah.
Sure,
ta'ala.
thank you. And you said, those who didn't agree could leave the room.
Yes.
Do we get paid for staying and agreeing what you said?
You make dua for us.
Okay,
if you
inshallah.
Say. Inshallah. We used to charge, but we don't charge anymore. Dylan told me don't do that anymore. All right, barakallah fikum. So I guess by just that introduction hopefully gives you an idea. Yes, sir, تفضل. معذرة, I didn't see you.
No, جزاكم الله خير. So, I just wanted to ask how, what you just said, Doctor, how sometimes it may be perceived in a way. How can we understand this, for example, with Hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-mu'min al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if. When we say, definitely the ultimate success, if we can really plant the seed in the heart of the students and in the heart of also the educators. But the idea of, even if we did not get the marks, which is a challenge for parents, students, schools, how can this may be perceived in that way, that undermining that success also in the education in itself? So just if you can.
No, absolutely. No, there is no doubt that, and I said yesterday, they're not mutually exclusive. But we have to realize that not every child is able to gain the academic marks.
Definitely.
Right? So if you were to then, in order of preference, الأولويات الأهم فالأهم, the most important, then the less important, then if a child is able to achieve academic excellence and at the same time the ultimate or the higher purpose of education, alhamdulillah, no problems. But if a child does not achieve the marks, and this is what some Islamic schools do, by grade 10, if they don't achieve the marks, they actually are kicked out of the school. Elitism in Islamic schools and filtering out so that the school can say, look at our marks. And often we go and visit schools, and no disrespect to any school. We're here to have self-critical thinking. You go into Islamic schools and the first thing you see at the outside is mug shots of students who achieve 99.9 and so forth. We don't celebrate other things. I'd love to go to a school where they say we have zero bullying in our school, for example. Yeah. So yes, we try to achieve academic excellence, but it should never be at the expense of the higher objectives.
Perfect. I just wanted to confirm the fact that we as educators, as parents, and also here in the room, that we are striving to achieve both. This is our goal, if we can.
Well, actually, I'd like to beg to differ.
Okay.
To say that we're trying to achieve both, you would have to prove to me then you're putting as much resources to achieve ma'rifatullah as to achieve academic excellence.
In theory, I'm just
no.
In theory.
In theory, no. This people come and say to me, but all Islamic schools are trying to achieve ma'rifatullah. I say, well, that's not what the vision statements say. That's not what their aims say. That's not what their resources say. That's not where their investment is going. So we need to be pragmatic, but also we need to be practical and realistic. Right? So there is no difference. I don't want anyone to leave here with the impression that we are saying no to academic excellence. Absolutely not. The Islamic civilization demonstrated the best education systems where they produced ulama who were polymaths.
Yeah.
Sahih?
Yeah.
Polymaths. At the core of everything they did. And they used, if you look, whether it was Imam Ghazali, I know sort of we're diverting, but whether it's Imam Ghazali, or whether it is Ibn al-Shatir, who was in Damascus, the astronomer Ibn al-Shatir, or whether it was Ibn al-Haytham. Notice, though they were masters in their disciplines, and I don't want to call them secular disciplines, because we don't have secular and sacred disciplines. That's a misnomer, and that's an imposition from Western thinking. We have one big circle called knowledge, and we have something intention and application. Then you have, as you know, fard ayn, fard kifaya, ilm nafi, ilm dar, full stop. Individually compulsory knowledge, communal compulsory knowledge, beneficial knowledge, harmful knowledge. But there is no such thing as secular and sacred. Is E equals MC squared, is that secular or sacred? Answer me. It's what? It's neutral. It's what you do with it. It's your intention for acquiring it, and say it is what you do with it. That's why Newton actually was bothered later when he realized that they're going to use it for the nuclear weapon. Because ethically he knew that was wrong. Knowledge is neutral for us, but what you notice Ibn al-Haytham, Ibn al-Shatir, and al-Ghazali and others did with that knowledge, they always brought it back to the Islamic worldview and used it to challenge the onslaught of ideology and ideology that was at their time. So the knowledge they sought wasn't for academic excellence per se, but it was the utilization of their mastery of those sciences in the service of Islam, which doesn't happen always. Sahih? That's why David King, a German scholar, he's written, he's not Muslim, but he's written Science in the Service of Religion, or it means Islam here, or Islam in the service of science. They were always, anyway, let me go back to my topic. All right, so just quickly, now I wanted to understand tarbiyah because every time I read about tarbiyah in English, I was bothered. And we heard several times about the problem with translation. Sister, yesterday, Zainab talked about that also, and this morning we heard Dr. Shaheen mention it briefly. So often when you come across the word tarbiyah in English, it's translated as nurturing, or I hope it's not grooming, it's nurturing, yes, or training, or right, education, pedagogy, nurturing. And I knew something is wrong there. It just wasn't right. And so I decided to go and spend 5 months in Qatar just looking at this concept. And I wanted to do so by going back to the Arabic dictionaries, the Lisan al-Arab and so on. Look at how the Arab scholars looked at the word tarbiyah and interviewed several eminent scholars, both in the field of tarbiyah, but also in linguistics and in Islamic studies, fiqh, to understand their understanding of tarbiyah. That's what we need to be doing. The minute you translate, and I'll give you some examples, the minute you translate Arabic, Islamic concepts into English without thinking about it, you can be superimposing Western ideas, wittingly or otherwise, intentionally or otherwise. And remember one thing, words have meanings and meanings have implications. So I wanted to find out, the other problem I was coming across when I was reading about tarbiyah in all the English literature is that often there is a confusion about the tarbiyah, ta'aleem, tadris, ta'deeb, tazkiyah. And sometimes they equate them. They say tarbiyah equals ta'aleem, and that's wrong. And or adab is higher than tarbiyah, and that is wrong. It's important not only to understand the intended meaning from an Islamic perspective, but the hierarchical relationship between concepts. Does, for example, ta'aleem sit above tarbiyah? You may think this is simplistic, but it is not. And you shall see why. Does, for example, ta'aleem sit above tarbiyah, or is tarbiyah above ta'aleem? As a question. Or the other question is ta'aleem and tadris the same? Is ta'aleem and tadris the same? Now, on face value, they may look the same. So, but I'm doing ta'aleem. Well, hold on. You are either doing tadris or you're doing ta'aleem. But you may not be doing tarbiyah, actually, as you're doing ta'aleem and tadris. So, and we'll see what the definitions of those are. So that's what my interest. And then I compared both the English literature and Arabic literature, both from the major dictionaries in Arabic, the Quran and the Hadith, the views of the ulama and the scholars, and came up with the understanding that I have now. It's not complete, but I'd like to share it with you, and then we'll have some discussions. And I ask you this question, do you identify as a teacher, educator, or murabbi? This is very important for us because the way you define yourself is who you are. And that will lead to how you engage in the classroom, and that will decide how you engage with the learner and other colleagues. And if the intended aim of you being in this profession is the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala, which it should be, and to help transform the lives of individuals, then you cannot just be a teacher. And you cannot just be an educator. Because in our tradition, in Islam, there is something more noble and higher. So let me ask you a question then. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was described also, aside from being Nabi and Rasul, he is described as Muallim. Sahih? You all know the hadith of the, yes? The hadith of the Sahabi says, you know, Ma naharani wa la shatamani. When a man came to pray Salah and he was doing it wrong, and Rasul sallam, and then he said, he never shouted at me, he never screamed at me, he never humiliated me. I haven't seen a muallim better than him before or after. Take the word muallim to describe Rasulullah as a muallim. Can you translate the word muallim in English? Right. But the English meaning of teacher here apply to Rasulullah as a muallim? When you hear Rasulullah is a muallim, what type of muallim? Is he just a teacher? Right. You see the impact of language. Now, a word of caution about English translation, and you spoke about that beautifully yesterday. In the modern world, translating from Arabic to dominant languages such as English significantly contributes to confusion and the misuse of certain semantic fields within Islamic vocab today. And therefore, I don't expect you as teachers to be, aware of this, but given that we are moving forward to trying to transform our field, we need to be aware of this. So that as schools and teachers, you have the courage to continue to use Islamic words without having the need to translate it. And I'll give you some examples. And this is because language constructs, interpret, express, and make available to other speakers a certain meaning of reality or a worldview which are constructed, shaped, and modified through translation. You agree with this statement? Right? And here is an example. How would you translate ihsan? Excellence. Those who translate the word ihsan, which is often the translation, into excellence. You see Islamic schools, they say their values. Excellence, ihsan, excellence. Hands up if you translate it as excellence.
There's no better word, unfortunately.
Yes.
I think you need multiple words. There's no one word.
There is no one word. But what do we do by default?
By default, we use the one word.
Why? Why do we default go and say excellence? Why? Why? Is it laziness?
No, it's the weakness of the English.
Weakness of the English language?
The weakness of the English language.
Sorry? Lack of knowledge about the meaning? Okay. Again, I'd like to be pedantic actually, because this is important. Now, this is how we often, so in the famous hadith, if I want to understand what ihsan is, we'll go to see how Rasulullah interpreted. We all know the famous hadith, الإحسان أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تراه فهو يراك. Okay, look at the meaning. This is the highest form of ihsan. Of course, ihsan is used also in different contexts in the Quran. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. But here, this is the supreme definition of ihsan. This is how it's translated. Some people say ihsan is excellence, which is often used, because it captures the idea of doing things in the best possible manner, right? Academic excellence. We even impose ihsan on academic excellence sometimes. Perfection is sometimes used, but that can mislead, since human beings cannot achieve absolute perfection. Some people say spiritual excellence or excellence in worship, which is closer, but still doesn't convey the depth of God consciousness or muraqabah implied. And some translators leave ihsan, and I prefer that. Leave ihsan, and you do that, untranslated. Hands up, is that a hand? Explaining it in a footnote or brackets because it is considered an untranslatable key term. So what you could do with your students, say ihsan means da 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 da, and we will only use ihsan from now on. Why can't we do that? Just hang on for a second. The problem is, if you don't do that, and you you jump to saying ihsan is excellence, this is what you end up doing. You flatten a deeply spiritual concept into a generic quality label that has huge implications on the way you then do things. Remember, language constructs your worldview. And that's why I said in my presentation yesterday, part of Tajdeed is the centrality of Arabic, which, according to all the research that we have done, I have a PhD student who she did her entire PhD on the experiences of students in Arabic language in Islamic schools. And I can tell you, and again, no disrespect to anybody, the weakest two subjects in all Islamic schools is Islamic studies and Arabic studies. And it is not because, as people say, not because students don't like Islam or don't like Arabic studies. No, but in the words of those students, because by the time they get to year 8 or 9, we have killed that enthusiasm in them. And that is primarily for 5 reasons. And if we can fix those 5 reasons, one, that's they saying to us, the students, because the way you're teaching and what you are teaching in Arabic studies and Islamic studies is boring, repetitive, biased, out of context, and irrelevant to my life. And
I would say that they discourage questions.
And well, that's right. Now, so classical scholars like An-Nawawi and Ibn Rajab emphasize that ihsan is about presence of heart, sincerity, and awareness of Allah. It is not just skills or outward excellence. Do not reduce these beautiful, deep concepts into skill-based concepts. Reducing it to excellence risks flattening a deeply spiritual concept into a generic quality label. And so you find ihsan, excellence. Really, you know, there's some Japanese buzzwords now that people just leaving it as is, as Japanese buzzwords. They're the trend now. Why can't we do this with ihsan? Leave it as ihsan. So if the generations to come realize this is our right. Is there any questions about this or any objections really to this? Since we said people don't get the chance to question. Does anyone? Yes, please.
It's not to oppose this.
You can oppose, it's okay.
No, if I have
Yes.
a question, I don't at present. It's more to just, it's a thought in my head, so I'll lay it on the table. When you talked about translating these terms like tarbiyah to English and there being a problem, the thoughts that popped in my head was that happens to language. If you are going to translate from English into
Yes.
Arabic, you encounter the same. Or from
Yes.
the Quran into, let's say, Nigerian languages will have the same.
That's right.
So it's the thoughts that popped up in my head. It's not peculiar. So even when we are teaching things about Islam to people within a certain linguistic context, that consciousness also has to
Correct.
be there.
Correct.
Then the second one, I was going to wait till the end, but I'm not sure if you will cover that, and I'm not sure how far you'll be able to get, is when we are talking about tarbiyah, and we are saying this is what teachers need to do, this is how you need to be in the classroom or in a setting with students. From my experience so far, the big block to that is not whether the teachers want to be great at doing tarbiyah. The bigger block is how their leaders, we who are in, this room is full of leaders, in that leadership administrative position, how we are handling them,
Sure.
the kind of pressure we put on them, what we penalize
Sure.
teachers for, what we tell them.
Sure.
So I would love for you to speak to that.
We will
because I
speak
think
to that.
there are more leaders in this
No,
room than
I appreciate that, but it is not just about the leaders. Even if, with due respect, even if the leaders don't understand tarbiyah, you as a teacher, an educator, in your classroom you can do tarbiyah. But it comes back to the earlier point. If we don't understand what tarbiyah is, if we don't see tarbiyah as a foundational, philosophical concept in our educational theory, you're not going to do tarbiyah regardless. We, in our short courses that we do with schools, a 4-week course, we get the educators to do action research to start reflecting. And we call it an inward turn. There is a point in time that the educator realizes, aha, we said to them, stop pointing the finger at everybody else. It's not always the student's fault, and it's not the environment's fault. Yes, these are contributing factors, but what about you? Where is the inward turn in you? And so everybody plays a role, as I said at the outset. But also, we should not use as an excuse, because tarbiyah is with you and Allah. Nobody can control that for you. Nobody can impose any restrictions on you. Now, defining tarbiyah. This is a summation. But in my article, it goes into the depth of it, but I'm not going to do that. So if I was to translate it, in the Arabic language dictionaries, the word tarbiyah has three roots: rabba yarbu, rabba yurabbi, and rabba yarubbu, with the associated meaning of. So see why nurturing doesn't work. You can't say tarbiyah is nurturing, and that's why tarbiyah is not just education, and tarbiyah is not just pedagogy. Growth and increase, formation and development, protection and care, improvement and foundation, and firmness in knowledge, all under tarbiyah. And it relates to several aspects of the human being: the physical, the intellectual, the spiritual, the moral, and the social. And this is important to remember, because it is not about just the spiritual. And it is not just about the intellectual. And it is not just about the physical. It's about all of those. And if it is about all of those, Brother Zafar, then everybody in the school can play a part. If you don't know the spiritual, if you don't do the therapy of the spiritual, you can do the therapy of the intellectual. And if you can do the therapy of the intellectual, you can certainly do the therapy of the physical, because they all are important in our tradition. An imbalance in those can lead to an imbalance in this particular person or the human being. Now, tarbiyah, classical linguist authorities like Al-Jawhari and Al-Asma'i describe tarbiyah as the process of nurturing toward full potential, extending even beyond one's own children. Again, I use nurturing with a caution, but with the previous definition. The term also denotes moral, intellectual, and physical refinement, as exemplified by the parent's role in developing a child's character, discipline, and abilities, aligning with divine principles of fostering growth and care. You say, well, should I be using all this definition all the time? Yes, you should. You should understand it and learn it and teach it. And then use the word tarbiyah, full stop. But that's what we mean by tarbiyah. This is the advice I give to our students who are writing dissertations or otherwise. Say tarbiyah, define it the first time fully, and just keep using tarbiyah. Don't give me an English word that said nurturing or pedagogy. We need to change the mindset. So it is, one could say therefore, it's an overarching term that means growth and increase, formation and development, protection, care, and improvement. It is the gradual development. So it's a process of something, gradual process, whether a child or learner, stage by stage until they reach not perfection, completion. What's the difference in the nuance? Wadud? What is the difference? If I said until they reach perfection, I'm very mindful. Until they reach completion. Yes, Allah is the most, and Rasul Sallam is the only perfect relative to us. Rasul Sallam, he reached Kamal. I'm sorry?
Perfection would imply flawless, no problems. Completion would imply there are stages that
Sure, that's right. But again, sometimes people they say Islam wants us to become insan kamil. That's inherited from the Greek philosophy. Insan kamil, a perfect human. There is no perfect human. Only al-anbiya alayhim salam. Yes.
But by the same virtue, can you even say that somebody's development is complete?
No, but to completion. You might reach completion in certain aspects, meaning you've tried your best and you reach the level, the top completion, but it's not perfect. Yes. No. It's not to perfect. Absolutely. And you can see the importance of the nuance. It is important. I think it is important. Yes?
So, basically, when you say until it reaches completion, would it also be able to define as reaches completion in the way that to their full potential?
Absolutely. Exactly. To their full potential. Because you can't aim for perfection. You will never get perfection. Tadris, briefly, This is associated now with structured learning environments, like classrooms where systematic instruction is provided. It is the process of formal education and structured lesson delivery. It is often used in contexts where instruction is directed, organized, and may involve a curriculum or syllabus. Tadris. It is less confined than ta'lim. Ta'lim is broader. Tadris, as it's very formal. It's in a classroom. You need a syllabus. That's why you can see tadris cannot be tarbiyah. It's very limited. Ta'lim has broader, more holistic meaning than tadris. That includes various forms of teaching, nurturing, and imparting wisdom beyond formal education. Yani, you can be walking down the corridor and doing ta'lim. Or you can be in the playground, because it's not instructional, it's not formal, you don't need a syllabus. Your behavior, through your action and behavior, you can be doing ta'lim. Sahih? Correct? The words, this makes you more mindful now. The words that you use can do ta'lim. Now the other concept that is people confused about is ta'deeb. And sometimes people say the intent of Islamic education is the ta'deeb of the child. And I disagree with that. Ta'deeb is the act, some people say ta'deeb and misuse it sometimes. The Arabs, if you say, "Inta mish mu'addab," what does it mean? Hey, you're not disciplined, you're not, right? Galil al-adab. You have no adab. Adab is part of ta'deeb, but it's not all ta'deeb. Ta'deeb has two meanings or two implications. One is to instill adab in somebody. Adab includes haya, modesty. Adab includes being shy in the presence of Allah in privacy. Adab. Ta'deeb could also mean actual discipline. And maybe we'll discuss this because people say, well, how do we balance then tarbiyah with discipline? Should we take discipline completely out of school? Ta'deeb actually has part of its disciplining or correcting behavior. So yes, you can correct behavior and you can discipline, but there is always a but. If you discipline to break a child, you're not doing tarbiyah. If you discipline to show power over a more vulnerable person, you're not doing tarbiyah. If you discipline to show authority, you're not doing tarbiyah. So yes, discipline is required, but again, how do we understand discipline? Now, if tarbiyah is the overarching framework as defined, then your discipline the intent behind discipline should not be to break, but to nurture. Then that changes the entire modus operandi. Well, how do I do that? How do I then discipline without humiliating the child? How do I discipline without breaking the child? How do I discipline without humiliating the learner? It's a fine line. And in the examples of Rasulullah there are, and I'll show you some examples where he disciplined, but the way he disciplined is not the way we understand discipline. Are you following or thinking of lunch? You following? Yes, tfaddali.
How would you connect all of these terms together? Like if I had a concept map on these
Yeah.
terms.
Yes, please. Yes.
So the way I'm understanding it is these are tools
Aha.
to achieve.
That's it. This is it. Right? Ta'aleem, tadris, and ta'deeb are branches of tarbiyah. They are the tools of tarbiyah. They are the instrumental aims. Together, these terms illustrate a spectrum of educational approaches from nurturing values and holistic growth, tarbiyah, imparting knowledge and wisdom, ta'aleem, structured lesson delivery, tadris, to refining character and correcting conduct, ta'deeb. Each plays a pivotal role in the Islamic understanding of education. And you took pictures? Let me stand on the stage when you take them. Astaghfirullah. Just being humble. Right. Tazkiyah is part of it, but I didn't include it because these are usually the terms that are used in English literature. But Tazkiyah is part of that, and it comes here. So then I was trying to think, well, how would I exemplify all of that? And really the best thing I thought, Tarbiyah is the heart of the educational process. It has to be the heart of the educational process. And those other aspects, ta'aleem, ta'deeb, tadris, tazkiyah, are the tools that we use to achieve tarbiyah through a long process. Right? They are the tools. And we'll give some examples, inshallah. So tarbiyah is the heart. It is the process. Now the sad reality is, tarbiyah is gone missing in our institutions. And when I was in Qatar for 5 months, I met with some of the leaders of Islamic schooling and education. In fact, one of the persons I met was the superintendent or the chief inspector of Islamic schools in Qatar. And he's Jordanian, actually. And when I said to him, I'm coming to do research on tarbiyah, he was elated. He was so happy. He said, oh my God, this is the missing piece in all of our schools, even in the Middle East. Because remember, and I was saying this yesterday, we've inherited a schooling model structure that is inherently Western, that cares nothing about tarbiyah. Sahih? In fact, the term that was used post-19th century, post-industrial revolution, this is the term that they used, na'udhu billah. The West felt that the only way to advance scientifically and technologically, and coming back to the earlier question, because we have to be aware, yes, we want to become empowered scientifically and technologically, and yes, we want to lead, but not with taking Allah out of the equation. And what the West has done, in their own words, they said the only way, because they had a problem with science. We didn't have a problem with science and the science of the cosmos. We've never had a problem with that. They did. They felt the only way to advance scientifically and technologically, and the term they use, na'udhu billah, is to sever the hands of God off. And that's exactly what they did. They took Allah out of the equation in all of their educational system. And if Allah is out of the equation, how do you nurture somebody? You will never be able to do tarbiyah. So I'm invoking you, encouraging you to think carefully. And obviously this session, I notice there are other sessions to talk about tarbiyah, which is amazing, because that has to come back. And as we are writing our vision statement and our mission and our strategic plan, tarbiyah has to be at the core. And you should always ask yourself, are we achieving the tarbiyah of our children? And this is where this academic excellence is important, but not the only thing. But if we can balance it, fantastic. Now what then might be the key features of a tarbiyah, and by extension a murabbi? And I'm going through this rather quickly. What might be the key? Let me ask you, what do you think are some key features of becoming a good murabbi? Or what would be the key features from an Islamic perspective of tarbiyah? Ta'aleem, tadris, ta'deeb, these are tools, as I said, but there has to be something different, yes?
I think one of the key features is a good-mannered human being.
Okay. Good mannered. What defines a good manner? What would be, if I was to ask you, what would be the most essential characteristic or quality of this good mannered human being?
Free of foul speech.
Free of foul speech, taqwa, ikhlas, sheikh, integrity, rahmah. Thank you very much. Sheikh, you want to say something?
Actually, tarbiyah and ihsan we are speaking about. If you can explain, this incident took place in Medina Munawwara, where Jibreel alayhi salam came in a human format, and he sat in front of Rasulullah alayhi wasallam.
Yes.
And that, I think, after giving that hadith in detail, if you go into ihsan,
yes,
I think everybody will understand.
Barakallah feek. Yes. What I found interesting is that the ulama that I spoke with, And listen to these, and some of these are some of the most profound and the prominent ulama of our time. And some of them would have mastered, and this is no exaggeration, now mastered 52 specialized Islamic branches of Islamic sciences. Mastered. And they looked at these two verses, which we always read, but sometimes they said the essence of the characteristics of tarbiyah are in these two ayat. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allah Azza wa Jal, in the ayat in Fatiha, which is the summation of the whole Quran, as you know, the opener, not the opening. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah, Alhamdulillah. Allah Ta'ala decides to start Al-Fatiha, which is Kitab. Alhamdulillahi Rabb al-Alameen. Al-Imam al-Baydawi rahmatullah says, Rabb here means tarbiyah. Allah Ta'ala decides to use this description of himself, Rabb al-Baydawi, Rabb al-Alameen. And more interestingly, now when and you know the word Rabb means, you say Rabbul Bayt, the person looking after all the affairs of the house. So Allah Rabbil Alameen, the one who looks after all the affairs of the worlds, the nurturer, the sustainer, the provider, the caregiver. Rabbil Alameen. Then the Rabb, who does the tarbiyah of the Alameen, decides to use these two attributes of his again and again and again at the beginning of every surah. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. He could have used any other. From this, those ulama say, the most essential and most important aspect of tarbiyah, therefore, is rahmah. For if Allah Himself deemed it important to describe Himself as the Rabb who does tarbiyah, as Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Meaning, they said, and these are not my words, they said, therefore, any process of tarbiyah, quote unquote, or any process of education, therefore, that is devoid of rahmah, it is devoid of tarbiyah. Now, if you associate this then with discipline, then even the discipline that you do, it must be couched in rahmah. You following? And you see how it's a different mindset now. Yes, I may have to do the discipline of the child, but it is with the understanding of rahmah. And that's why all the fuqaha will agree, you never smack a child in the face, correct? More so, Islamic psychology, you never discipline or hurt a child's feeling in private or in public. More so, parents, even when they want to discipline their child, they should never do it in the presence of other children. Rahmah. Now, this mindset will make us think differently. So, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most essential element of tarbiyah is rahmah. And sometimes people come and say, well, does that mean the school has to become soft now and we don't have to have discipline? No. It's how you understand discipline and the intended aim of discipline. Sadly, we all think discipline is to be harsh and hard and hurtful. And even in Sharia, with the few prescribed penalties harsh penalties for certain crimes, zina, etc., the term that is used is what? Had. Had means what? When you want to use these harsh penalties for those crimes, it is the furthest limit. You wait till the furthest limit. Had is the had of the tawla, the table. The had is the furthest limit. It's not the default position. The brothers at the back, you following or? Yes? Now, because of time, what could we derive from these two verses? I said the rahmah. Now, when Allah Ta'ala wanted to describe His Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in this surah He said to him, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. Now He's the best mu'allim, He's the best teacher, He's the best educator. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. My brothers and sisters, these ayat of the Quran and the stories of Rasulullah, they are not simply there for us to just ponder upon and be amazed by them. They are meant to be acted upon. The translation, the meaning of the translation, that the interpretation that you were, so it says, and because of the rahmah of Allah, you've been made lenient towards them. Now this is the best teacher and the best students, the Sahaba. You've been made lenient towards them. And had you been hard-hearted, obnoxious and rude in your approach, even your best students, the Sahaba, would run away from you, O Muhammad. Who's saying this to him? Allah Ta'ala. Commenting on this, Imam al-Tabari said, the interpretation of these statements is that you were gentle towards your followers and companions. Your nature was made easy for them. And your character was made beautiful in their eyes. You bore patiently in the harm caused by those among them who hurt you. You pardoned those who committed offenses. And you overlooked much of those who, had you been harsh or severe with them, would have abandoned you, left your side, and not followed you or the message of mercy you were sent with. But Allah had mercy upon them and upon you along with them, and thus by mercy from Allah you were gentle with them. Sometimes we look at this and say, no, but that was Rasulullah. I don't have to be like this. No, you have to be like this. One of the most repeated complaints we have, and excuse me again, I'm not trying to pick on any particular group, but is that they tell us such and such teachers are so hard with us, they're so harsh, they use sometimes very difficult language that breaks us. And we have to be mindful of that. So, this is, I left it in Arabic and I'll do the translation quickly. And this is a famous story. And this now, it has several layers, this hadith. The tarbiyah, the ta'aleem, the tadris, the ta'deeb, the discipline, all in one. And it says, and I didn't translate it because I wanted to, a man, a shab. Shab means what? Young man. Full of, a young man comes to Rasulullah and listen what he says to him. And if you are a principal, put yourself in his shoes now. You're sitting down, and a young man comes to you in front of all your teachers and the students. He says, Brother Zafar, I want to commit zina. This is what the young man said. Then leave zina. Please give me permission to commit zina, Ya Rasulullah. Habibi, what? You coming to Rasulullah and you're asking for a major sin. And in the presence of everybody, then give me permission to commit zina. Look what the response of the people are. فَأَقْبَلَ الْقَوْمُ عَلَيْهِ فَزَجَرُوهُ. Naturally, the people around Rasulullah, they started screaming at this guy. Which would be our approach? Right? What the heck are you talking about? Don't you know this is haram? وَقَالُوا مَا stop. فَقَال, look. فَقَالَ أُدْنُ, come close to me. Pedagogical approach. Look, he says, come close to me. What does this indicate? When you say to somebody, please come close to me. Connection. What do you do immediately in doing so? Right. He says, Udnu, fadana minhu qariban. He came very close to him. Now, if it was the principal, he might. Well, faqal, ijlis. Now he said, look, in psychology, they call it breaking the pattern, interrupting the pattern. He says, ijlis. He was standing. He says, sit down. Fajalas. He says, do you love it for your mother? It's discipline, but look at the approach. He says, no, wallah, of course not. Then he says, may Allah make you, may I be sacrificed for you, O Messenger of Allah. I don't like it for my mother. He says, and people don't like it for their mothers. Do you like it for your daughter? No. He says, people don't like it for their daughters. Do you like it for your sister? No, I don't like it for my sister. He says, also others don't like it for their sisters. Do you like it for your auntie? He said, no, I don't. He says, others don't like it for their aunties. Do you like it for your maternal auntie? He says, no. He says, others don't like it for their maternal. What was he doing with him? What's he doing with him? Think. Are you aware what? And then look what he says to him. And this is profound tarbiyah. And this is profound approach. He didn't get angry at him. He broke the pattern. He tried to make him think, and then he said, he did, and this is missing. This is what is missing often in the process of tarbiyah. He says, Allahumma ghfir dhanbah, wa tahhir qalbah, wa hassin farjah. You feel like crying, right? He says, Ya Allah. Rasulullah, he says, Ya Allah, forgive his sin, purify his heart, and protect his privacy, his chastity. The man says, فَلَمْ يَكُنْ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ الْفَتَى يَلْتَفِتُ إِلَى شَيْءٍ. After that moment, the man was transformed. Our deen has it all. I was saying yesterday, we just need to believe in it. Be convinced and go and bring it out. So that's one example. You could draw so many lessons from this. And what I did is just, now somebody might say, no, but I'm a teacher and I can't. Of course you can do it. What's stopping you? What is stopping you as a teacher from implementing this? Answer me. I can tell you what's stopping you. Exactly. You are stopping you. And that is why, remember one thing, فَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. If you don't have it, you can't give it. That's why the process will start with me. And that's why I said yesterday, deliberately I said, teacher training programs is not just about learning Islamic pedagogy in the why, but also tazkiyah is needed. Schools should invest in this. Help your staff and educators to know how to become a murabbi. Yes?
One of the most critical aspects for our school has been the weekly tazkiyah class.
Alhamdulillah. Have you found it useful? Right. Tazkiyah classes. Absolutely. Why don't we draw on these tools that we have? Yes, brother. I'm sorry? Tazkiyah? Hikmah. No, hikmah is under tarbiyah. Yes. It is part and part of the process, because to be a murabbi you have to have wisdom also. Hikmah is to do the right thing at the right time in the right place. وَضَعِ الشَّيْءِ فِي مَحَلِّهِ. Right? Now, just quickly, here is another example, which also famous. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قام أعرابي فبال في المسجد. We know this. We remind ourselves, but I'm trying to link it to tarbiyah. فثار إليه الناس فقال لهم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم دعوه وهريقوا على بوله سجلا من ماء أو ذنوبا من ماء فإنما. Look, he's taking this as an opportunity to teach the Sahaba. بُعِثْتُمْ مُيَسِّرِينَ وَلَمْ تُبْعَثُوا مُعَسِّرِينَ. Imagine, again, Rasulullah is sitting in his masjid. The Sahaba is with him. A Bedouin walks in and he doesn't scream, he doesn't shout, he doesn't use foul language, he starts urinating in the masjid. What? The response of the Sahaba, as would our response be, get up, wah! I say to the brothers in the masjid, imagine we're sitting in the masjid and one Australian non-Muslim guy walks in, singlets, short, tattoos, and earring, goes to the corner and starts urinating. Khalas, Allah yarhamu, he's dead. No, because this is theory only for us. What's the difference? I don't know. What's the difference? Is there a difference? So the Sahaba says, oh! He says, leave him. What? He said, let him complete. What about the najasa of the masjid, the impurities? Najas. He said, let him finish. And other scholars commented on this. He says, because Rasulullah also, the rahmah of Rasulullah is that he doesn't want to interrupt this man because it could hurt him, could harm him. I said discipline through rahmah. And then he says, leave him. And then he teaches them a mas'ala. It's an opportunity to teach, not to break the man. Hey, stop, let him finish. The other thing is that if they chase him, it'll be a bigger disaster, right? Leave him. And then he teaches them, this is how you cleanse impurity. 5 minutes. And then he says, importantly, you have been sent to make things easy, not to make things difficult. And that is a key feature of Rasulullah as a mu'allim. Is there a hands up? No. Okay, I'll just finish with the last one. And the last one, and this is also interesting, and Brother Zafar, imagine you as the principal of the school sitting there with all your leadership team. They're all on your left, and a boy, 8-year-old boy comes and sits on your right, and somebody brings you water, and you're about to drink, but you want to now give that water, you want to do ikram. And so you look at all the buzruks, all the big elders sitting on your right, on your left, and this 8-year-old boy on your right. Who do you give the water to? If we're honest with ourselves. But why do we give it to the senior ones? We feel embarrassed, we feel respect maybe. What they're going to say? Rasulullah sallam, same thing. The boy is there, somebody gives him water. He wants, Rasulullah is teaching by he's being a role model. You talk about sunnah, he says, do you give me permission to give them the water first? Allahu Akbar. Who asks a young child permission? Would the principal ask the 8-year-old permission nowadays? No, let's be honest with ourselves. Would we? What would you say to, get out, mate. Out. Can't you see we have this meeting? You break the child. Now you can spend the next 10 years to fix it. You may never fix it, actually. He says, would you, I don't know. How do you describe this? How do you describe it? I don't know. Would you give me permission to give them? He said, no, I don't give permission. Yeah, I need to make matters worse, to make it more difficult for Rasulullah sallam, or the principal. He said, no, I don't give permission. What does Rasulullah say? What? Don't you have adab? Are you not disciplined? Haven't your parents taught you how to respect the elders? This is the default response. Sahih? What did Rasulullah do? I know we've heard this many times, but sometimes we need to sit and reflect. What did he do? Here. Now, there's another interesting twist to this story. Did any of the Sahaba complain? Did any of the senior Sahaba complain after? What? He gave it to the young boy. Does he not respect us? Are we not the elders? Now, my question to you, why did they not complain? Why? Somebody say it louder. Right. They've been nurtured properly. Their tarbiyah is right. They know, no, hold on. The sunnah, he's teaching. That's why I said earlier, the tarbiyah doesn't have to be in the classroom only. It is something like that can change the life of this child forever. He feels respected, dignified, trusted, valued. You don't even have to speak. Now, can you imagine the level of trust this child now will have for you? Right. Anyway, quickly, from those 3 stories, this is what lessons we can derive. Mercy precedes correction. From the man who urinated in the masjid, Rasulullah ﷺ corrected behavior without humiliation. So the idea that we should throw out discipline or correcting behavior is wrong. But it's how we do it and why we do it. Tarbiyah requires prioritizing mercy and understanding over punishment, guiding with gentleness rather than anger, number 1. Secondly, transforming impulse into insight. From the young man who sought permission for zina, Rasulullah ﷺ channeled the youth's desire into moral awareness through calm reasoning and empathy. Tarbiyah cultivates self-control by engaging the intellect and conscience, not through fear. Most of us grew up in societies, Muslim majority nations, fearful of everything, especially the mukhabarat, the security intelligence services. And last, respecting the learner's dignity. From the incident of Ibn Abbas, Rasulullah respected the boy's right, even in the presence of elders. This idea of the child, the rights of the child, is so important in our tradition, our deen. It has to be understood, it has to be learned, and it has to be applied throughout. They have rights. And Tarbiyah recognizes the worth of every learner, nurturing confidence, fairness, and a sense of personal responsibility. Prophetic gentleness as a model. Across the three examples, the Prophet ﷺ embodies rahmah as the foundation of Tarbiyah. True education is not merely the transfer of knowledge, but the nurturing of hearts through compassion, justice, and wisdom. I know we're over time. All right, any final questions, comments? I hope this was useful. Number one, yes?
We have the major challenge of training our teachers for Tarbiyah, making them Murabbi. How to go for it?
Okay, it's a challenge because we've made it a challenge.
Because?
We made it a challenge. We made it a challenge, right? If we want, we can make it happen. So when you ask me how do you do it, the first thing I will say to you, mindset. Go and believe in this first. Understand it. Make it a priority. Then you will make it a policy, 100%. We make them, and I used yesterday the example of AI. We say, oh, but what? Technology. But we are old, we can't use technology. You must learn how to use it because otherwise you're going to get out of school. So what do? They go and learn. We've made it a challenge, brother. Allah Ta'ala gave us this beautiful package. It's not meant to be challenging. It's meant to be accessible, but we have made it inaccessible. Tfaddali.
I agree with you that I think it's one of the biggest lessons of working in an Islamic environment is the ease to which people's hearts are open.
Sahih. The ease to which the heart, in Islamic school, in fact, you have the opportunity to do that. Who's stopping you? Some people say, oh, but we have a national curriculum. National curriculum has got nothing to do with tarbiyah. You bring that in. Brother Dylan always says, in Australia, you can drive a truck through the Australian national curriculum. Sahih. Thank you, Brother Dylan. Always he says that. And you know what? And would you, mashallah, many of our Islamic schools now, and some of them are here, mashallah, they are taking these ideas and now they believe in it. So, but initially it was a mindset issue where people felt, I have to conform. I can't come out until we brought one day in our conference a non-Muslim lady who was an associate professor in education, but she's the head of the Australian National Curriculum Foundation. So she's it. And she stood in front of all these Muslim principles. She says, the national curriculum is a guide. Use it to serve your best interest. Don't be restricted by it. And you can infuse tarbiyah across and throughout. Jazakallah khair. Yes. You can stop us anytime. Yes.
Answer to what the brother asked.
Please.
If we look at the curriculum, we come from Nigeria.
Yes.
So what we do is we treat the national curriculum as minimal requirements. And then we can then add on infuse tweaks. So if a teacher wants to use the tarbiyah method based on what we described to teach in a classroom, what most curriculum want you to do, they just want you to show you've taught this content. If you're adding more, that's not an issue. The second thing is if we look at the two of the references you used, the one to do with it's by the mercy of Allah that you were lenient with them, and then the one to do with the boy who asked for zina.
Yes.
It helps, I think, speak to what I raised earlier. In those two different scenarios, in one, the Prophet ﷺ was dealing with adults. In the second, he was dealing with a young boy, but the mercy still came through.
Correct.
So it brings me back to this question of leaders themselves have to embody the tarbiyah in their
100%.
relationship with the teachers.
No, 100%. Everybody needs to embody tarbiyah. But whilst I agree with you, we must not wait for the leaders to embody tarbiyah for us to start tarbiyah. Right? Because remember one thing, and this is an important point. Yes, tarbiyah is not just about helping transform the learner. Tarbiyah is to transform you also. And that's why we always say, Dylan, Nadeem and I, we always say, if we do education properly, then you will be transformed and the learner will be transformed. It's a journey of transformation for all. Wallahu alam. Yes?
Sheikh, how do I strike the balance? Because I'm working with a lot of cross-cultural boys, and some of them only understand a physical approach.
Like punching.
Like if I take, I don't want to say this, but if Pakistani, there's this one boy, if you don't give him a knock on his head, he's not going to feel your love.
Yeah, the philosophy, the ethical, so no, thank you for that. No, this is in Islamic ethics, the ends don't justify the means. Full stop. We're not Marxists. The means must be halal. And smacking him on the head because you think this is the only way he learned is unacceptable. It is haram. It goes against the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The idea of darb, even the idea of darb, coming back to translation, one ayah in the Quran, verse 3, chapter 3, verse 3-4, where it talks about women who are nushuz, have nushuz, and then it says وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. You know how much problems that has caused because of the wrong English translation? Because in the mind of the mufassir and the faqih, the jurist, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ here doesn't mean beat them as in the English language. It doesn't mean scourge them as in the English language. It doesn't mean strike them as is often translated. Right? When the faqih and the mufassir and the Muslim alim and the scholar looks at the word وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, he or she know exactly what is meant by that. And it's not the English equivalence of beat, scourge or strike. And similarly, we have when we say darb of the children, doesn't mean beat the heck out of them. We produce sometimes, sorry to say that, munafiqeen, people who may memorize the text, but because of being beaten so hard, they hate deen. I know people who, the minute they left madrasa or the minute they left Islamic schools, they were the ducks in these places. They were the ducks, and the minute they left, they became mulhid. They left deen entirely. Right? And so the means, and sometimes people say, but Sheikh so-and-so beat so-and-so. With due respect, the Sheikh is not my role model. Rasulullah ﷺ is our role model. He is the uswa, Allah told us. So he is our default reference point, first and foremost. Wallahu alam.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Thank you very much for this wonderful session. I would just like to add that I was also reflecting upon this topic of tarbiyah. And when you are talking about the qualities of murabbi, I found that murabbi is starting from meme. And 7 memes are more essential for murabbi. First is muttaqi, he must be cognizant of Allah. Second is mukhlis, he must be sincere and honest. Third is muallim, he must have knowledge and wisdom. Just as Sheikh was asking, and you told, hikmat is also very necessary. He must be mudabbir, tadabbur. The words in Quran coming, tadabbur, ta'akkul, tafakkur, all shows that mudabbir, a murabbi must be. He must be muhsin, he must always be patient, and he must have tolerance. He must be musleh, betterment, always working for betterment and correction. And last is, he must be murshid, he must be always ready to guide and advise.
Jazakallah khair. Time, finish, sorry. Barakallah, sorry, it's your.
Thank you very much.